The rain hammered against the palace windows like bullets. Inside the grand hall, royal guard Marcus stood frozen, his hand trembling on his sword. What he had just witnessed would change everything he thought he knew about duty, about loyalty, and about the woman the world called Princess Catherine. It was 3 in the morning. Marcus had been assigned to the night watch, a routine shift that should have been quiet. But nothing about this night was routine. Through the ornate corridor, he heard footsteps. Soft, hurried, almost silent. Someone was moving through the palace who shouldn't be there. His training kicked in. Marcus pressed himself against the cold marble wall, his breath shallow. The footsteps grew closer. Then he saw her. Not an intruder. Not a threat. It was Catherine herself, dressed in simple clothes, a dark cloak pulled over her shoulders. No crown, no jewels. Just a woman with tears streaming down her face. Marcus should have announced himself. Protocol demanded it. But something stopped him. The look in her eyes wasn't fear. It was determination mixed with heartbreak. She moved past him, unaware of his presence, and slipped through a side door that led to the old servants' quarters. Every instinct told Marcus to alert the senior guard. A member of the royal family wandering the palace alone at night was a security breach. But his feet wouldn't move. Instead, he followed her, staying in the shadows, his heart pounding in his chest. If you want to hear what happens next, hit that subscribe button now. This story gets deeper than you can imagine. Catherine descended a narrow staircase Marcus had never used. The air grew colder, damper. These passages were ancient, built centuries ago when the palace served as a fortress. At the bottom, a heavy wooden door stood slightly ajar. Candlelight flickered from within. Marcus positioned himself where he could see, but not be seen. What he witnessed next shattered every assumption he held. Inside the small chamber sat 12 people. Not nobles. Not dignitaries. These were ordinary citizens, their clothes worn and patched. A woman held a sick child. An elderly man clutched a cane. A young couple looked exhausted, their eyes hollow with worry. Catherine knelt beside them, not as a princess. As an equal, she took the sick child's hand, her voice soft but clear. "His name," she said to the mother. "Thomas, Your Highness," the woman whispered, terrified. "Not here," Catherine said gently. "Here, I'm just Catherine, and we're going to help Thomas together." For the next hour, Marcus watched in stunned silence. Catherine listened to each person's story. A farmer who lost his land to flooding, a widow struggling to feed her children, a veteran injured in service, forgotten by the system meant to protect him. She didn't offer empty promises. She took notes. She asked questions. She made phone calls on a simple mobile phone. Not the secure royal line, but it was what she said to the veteran that broke Marcus's heart. "My title means nothing if I can't use it to help you," Catherine said, her voice cracking. "The crown is heavy, but your burdens are heavier, and I won't sleep until we fix this." When the last person left through a concealed exit, Catherine remained alone in the chamber. She covered her face with her hands and wept. Not the polished tears of a public appearance. These were raw, exhausted sobs of someone carrying the weight of a nation on her shoulders. Marcus finally understood. This wasn't a security breach. This was a secret mission of compassion. And somehow, he had become a witness to something the world was never meant to see. But what Marcus didn't know was that someone else had been watching too. And by morning, everything would unravel in ways no one could predict. Dawn broke cold and gray over the palace. Marcus stood at his post, his mind racing. He hadn't slept. How could he? What he'd witnessed changed everything. But duty demanded silence. A royal guard never spoke of what happened within palace walls. At 7 o'clock sharp, the morning briefing began. Commander Harrison stood before the assembled guards, his face carved from stone. Something was wrong. Marcus felt it in the air, thick as fog. "Gentlemen," Harrison began, his voice cutting through the silence. "We have a situation. Last night, security protocols were breached. Someone accessed the lower passages without authorization." Marcus's blood turned to ice. Harrison continued. "Surveillance caught movement in restricted areas. The individual has been identified." He paused, his jaw tight. It was Princess Catherine. Murmurs rippled through the ranks. Harrison raised his hand for silence. What concerns us more is this: she wasn't alone. Someone followed her. We believe it was one of our own. Every eye in the room seemed to turn toward Marcus, though no one knew for certain. His heart hammered against his ribs. Should he confess? Should he explain what he saw? Before he could decide, the doors burst open. A royal advisor strode in, his face flushed with anger. Commander, the princess has been summoned before the royal council. They're demanding answers. And they want the guard who followed her identified immediately. The room fell silent. Marcus felt sweat bead on his forehead. This wasn't just about protocol anymore. This was about Catherine's secret work being exposed. And if the council discovered what she'd been doing, helping common citizens in secret, bypassing official channels, it could be considered treason against royal procedure. Harrison dismissed the briefing. As guards filed out, he called out,
Marcus.
Stay behind. The room emptied. Marcus stood alone before his commander, a man he'd served under for 8 years. Harrison studied him with eyes that missed nothing. It was you, wasn't it? Marcus could have lied. Should have lied. But years of honor wouldn't let him, yes, sir. Harrison exhaled slowly. What did you see? Marcus chose his words carefully. I saw a woman helping people who had nowhere else to turn. I saw compassion. I saw someone using their position not for power, but for service. The council won't see it that way, Harrison said quietly. They'll see a princess breaking protocol, meeting citizens in secret, making promises outside official channels. They'll call it reckless, dangerous. It wasn't dangerous, Marcus said, finding courage. It was necessary. Harrison walked to the window, staring out at the palace grounds. The royal council meets in 1 hour. They'll question Catherine. They'll demand she stop these meetings. And if she refuses, there will be consequences.
What kind of consequences?
The kind that could strip her of her duties. Her title? Everything she's worked for. Marcus felt anger rise in his chest. For helping people? For caring? For breaking the rules, Harrison said sharply. Then softer, even if those rules are wrong, turned to face Marcus. You have a choice. You can testify before the council. Tell them what you saw. Your word as a royal guard carries weight. You could defend her, or you stay silent. Let this play out. Keep your position, your career. No one would blame you. Marcus thought of Catherine's tears, her determination, the relief on those citizens' faces when she promised to help. He thought of the veteran who'd been forgotten, the mother with the sick child. I'll testify, Marcus said. Harrison nodded slowly. I hoped you'd say that. But Marcus, understand this. The council won't be kind. They'll attack her character. They'll call her naive, emotional, unfit for leadership. And anyone who defends her will face the same scrutiny. I understand. Sir, good. Then let's go save a princess from her own compassion. As they walked toward the council chambers, Marcus saw Catherine in the corridor ahead. She looked exhausted, her eyes red from crying. When she noticed him, she stopped. For a moment their eyes met. She didn't know he'd followed her. Didn't know he'd seen everything, but somehow in that brief glance an understanding passed between them. She gave him the smallest nod. Not of recognition. Of readiness. Inside the council chamber, 12 council members sat in a semicircle, their faces stern and unyielding. At the center sat Lord Pemberton, the head of the council, a man known for his rigid interpretation of royal law. Catherine stood before them, alone and dignified. Princess Catherine, Pemberton began, his voice dripping with disdain. You stand accused of conduct unbecoming of your station, meeting common citizens in secret, making unauthorized promises, acting outside your official capacity. Catherine lifted her chin. I stand accused of caring for my people. You stand accused of recklessness, Pemberton shot back. And we have evidence. We have witness testimony. We have proof of your unauthorized activities. He gestured to a stack of documents on the table. Unless you can provide compelling reason for these violations, This council has no choice but to recommend your removal from all public duties. The room fell silent. Catherine's hands trembled, but her voice remained steady. Then let me provide that reason. What she said next would change the course of history. And Marcus, standing at attention by the door, realized he wasn't just witnessing a council hearing. He was witnessing a revolution. Catherine stood before the council, her hands clasped in front of her. The weight of their judgment pressed down like a physical force. But when she spoke, her voice carried a strength that silenced the room. You want a reason? She began. Then let me give you 12. 12 people who came to me not because they wanted favors, but because the system we created failed them. Lord Pemberton leaned forward. The proper channels exist for citizen concerns. The proper channels turn them away, Catherine said, her voice rising. Thomas is 7 years old. He's dying because his family can't afford the treatment our own hospitals provide. They filled out forms, waited months, were denied 3 times by bureaucracy while their son deteriorated. She pulled out a folder from her bag. Here, official denials. Stamped by our own offices. Signed by officials who never even met the family. Council members shifted uncomfortably. Catherine continued. James Whitmore, veteran, served this nation for 15 years. Lost his leg in service. Applied for disability support through proper channels. Do you know what he received? A letter thanking him for his service and a voucher for job retraining. He can barely walk. Her hands shook as she held up another document. Eleanor Chen, widow, 3 children. Her husband died building the infrastructure we use every day. She applied for survivor benefits. Proper channels. She's been waiting 2 years. 2 years while her children go hungry? These are unfortunate cases, Pemberton said coldly, but they don't justify your actions. Unfortunate? Catherine's voice cracked. These aren't statistics on a report. They're human beings. And yes, I met them in secret because if I'd gone through official channels, we'd still be scheduling meetings while they suffered. You made promises you have no authority to keep, another council member accused. I made calls, Catherine corrected. 2 doctors. To social workers. To people who actually care. Thomas started treatment yesterday. James has an appointment with a specialist next week. Eleanor received emergency assistance last night. She stepped closer to the council table. I didn't promise them the moon. I promised them what they were already entitled to as citizens of this nation. I just cut through the red tape that was killing them. Marcus watched from his position by the door. He'd never seen her like this. Not the polished princess from public appearances. This was someone fighting for lives with everything she had. Pemberton's face reddened. You undermined our systems. You created a precedent where royal family members can bypass established procedures on a whim. A whim? Catherine's voice turned to steel. I held that child's hand while he cried from pain. I listened to a war veteran explain how he contemplates ending his life because he feels worthless. I watched a mother ration food so her children could eat. That's not a whim. That's reality.
Owl!
It's emotional manipulation, Pemberton said dismissively. You let sentiment override protocol. The room fell silent. Catherine stared at him, and for a moment Marcus saw something break inside her. But instead of crumbling, she seemed to grow stronger. You're right, she said quietly. I did let emotion guide me. I let compassion override protocol, and I'd do it again. Gasps echoed through the chamber. This was tantamount to admitting guilt. Pemberton smiled, thinking he'd won. Then you leave us no choice, but I'm not alone in this, Catherine interrupted. She turned to face the guards at the door. Guard Marcus. Step forward. Marcus's heart stopped. Every eye in the room turned to him. Commander Harrison gave him a slight nod. Marcus stepped forward, his boots echoing on the marble floor. Tell them what you saw, Catherine said. This was it. The moment that would define his career, possibly his life. Marcus could protect himself, give a neutral report, survive this intact, or he could tell the truth. He chose truth. Last night, I witnessed Princess Catherine meeting with 12 citizens in the lower chambers. I observed the entire encounter. Pemberton leaned back, satisfied. So you confirm she violated protocol? I confirm she saved lives, Marcus said firmly. The room erupted. Council members shouted objections. Pemberton demanded order. But Marcus continued, his voice cutting through the chaos. I've served the Royal Guard for 8 years. I took an oath to protect the crown and the people of this nation. In that chamber last night, I saw both being honored. Not through ceremony or protocol, but through actual service. He looked directly at Pemberton. That veteran you called an unfortunate case? James Whitmore. He served under my father. He pulled 3 men from a burning vehicle before it exploded. He's a hero, and our system told him to retrain for a desk job. Marcus's voice grew stronger. The widow? Eleanor Chen? Her husband died building the memorial bridge we all drive across. The same bridge some of you will cross to get home tonight. And we let his family starve. This is highly irregular, a council member protested. So is letting children die while paperwork gets processed, Marcus shot back. Catherine stood beside him now, tears streaming down her face. Not tears of defeat. Tears of gratitude that someone understood. Pemberton stood, his face purple with rage. This council will not be lectured by a guard. Princess Catherine, you have admitted to breaking protocol. Royal Guard Marcus, you have confirmed it. This council recommends immediate suspension of the princess from all official duties pending further investigation. The gavel came down. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Catherine's shoulders sagged. 8 years of service, of dedication, of trying to make a difference, ended in a single strike of wood against wood. But as guards moved to escort her out, something unexpected happened. The chamber doors burst open, and standing there, soaked from rain, were the 12 people Catherine had helped. Behind them, dozens more, then hundreds, crowding into the corridor. At the front stood the mother holding young Thomas, the boy who'd been dying just days ago. We're here, she said simply, to testify for our princess. What happened next would be talked about for generations. Because sometimes the most powerful testimony doesn't come from councils or committees. It comes from the people who were actually saved. The council chamber descended into chaos. Palace security didn't know what to do. Hundreds of citizens packed the corridor, their voices rising in a chorus of support. Lord Pemberton shouted for order. But his voice was drowned out by the crowd. Commander Harrison stepped forward, his hand raised. The crowd quieted. He looked at Pemberton with an expression Marcus had never seen before. Defiance. My lord, these citizens have a right to be heard. They're here to provide testimony relevant to this hearing. This is a closed council session, Pemberton protested. You opened it to testimony when you called Guard Marcus, Harrison said calmly. These people have evidence to present. Pemberton looked around the room, seeing he was outnumbered not just by citizens, but by the shifting expressions of his own council members. Some looked uncomfortable, others curious. One elderly woman on the council, Lady Margaret, stood slowly. Let them speak, she said quietly. We've heard accusations. Now let's hear the defense. Pemberton had no choice. He sat down heavily, his face a mask of fury. The mother with Thomas stepped forward first. She was trembling, clearly terrified to be standing before such power. But when she spoke, her voice was clear. My name's Sarah Mitchell. This is my son, Thomas. 3 months ago, he was diagnosed with a rare blood disorder. We went through proper channels. We filled out every form. We waited for approval while he got sicker. She held up a stack of papers, her hands shaking. These are the rejection letters. Each one took 6 weeks to receive. Each one said we needed more documentation, more proof, more waiting. By the time we got the 3rd rejection, Thomas couldn't walk anymore. Tears streamed down her face. I didn't know what to do. I was ready to sell everything we owned, go into debt we'd never recover from. Then someone told me about a woman who actually listened, who actually helped. She looked at Catherine. Princess Catherine met me in a basement chamber at 3 in the morning because she couldn't sleep knowing my son was suffering. She didn't promise me miracles. She promised me she'd make the system work the way it was supposed to. Sarah pulled out another document. This is Thomas's treatment approval. It came through in 48 hours. Not because rules were broken, but because one person actually cared enough to make the phone calls to push the right people. To treat my son like a human being instead of a file number. She turned to the council. You want to punish her for that? Then you'll have to punish every parent who would do anything to save their child. Because that's what she did. She saved mine. Thomas, pale but standing on his own, looked up at the council with eyes too wise for his 7 years. Princess Catherine told me that being royal means being responsible for everyone, he said in a small voice. I think she's the only one who remembers that. The chamber was silent. Lady Margaret wiped her eyes. Even some of the harder council members looked shaken. Next came James Whitmore, the veteran. He moved forward with his cane, his prosthetic leg visible beneath his worn trousers. He didn't wait to be invited to speak. I'm James Whitmore. 15 years of service. 3 tours. Lost my leg saving my unit. His voice was gruff, military sharp. When I came home, I thought the country I fought for would help me adjust. Instead, I got paperwork and rejection letters. He laughed bitterly. They offered me job retraining. Suggested I become a data entry clerk. I can't sit for more than 2 hours without pain medication. But sure, let's retrain the crippled soldier for office work. Mr. Whitmore, Pemberton began. But James cut him off. I was ready to end it. Had the pills. Wrote the letters. Figured I'd served my purpose, and the nation was done with me. The room froze. James's eyes glistened. Then I got a call from Princess Catherine. Not her assistant. Her. She said she'd heard about my situation and wanted to help. I thought it was a scam. Pulled out his phone, scrolling to a message. She texted me personally. Asked me to meet her. When I got there, she was crying. Crying for me. A princess crying for a broken-down soldier she'd never met. His voice cracked. She got me an appointment with a specialist who actually understands combat injuries. She connected me with other veterans. She made me feel like I mattered again. Like my service meant something. He looked directly at Pemberton. You want to punish someone for saving my life? Go ahead. But you'll have to live with knowing you value protocol more than human beings. One by one, the others stepped forward. Eleanor Chen spoke of how Catherine helped secure her survivor benefits in days instead of years. A farmer explained how she connected him with emergency relief after flooding destroyed his crops. A young woman told of how Catherine helped her escape an abusive situation when official services had waiting lists. Months long, each story was different, each one devastating. And each one proved the same point. Catherine hadn't broken the system. She'd made it work the way, should have all along. But it was the last testimony that broke the chamber wide open. An elderly man stepped forward, leaning heavily on a walking stick. He was dressed simply, but carried himself with quiet dignity. When he spoke, his voice was soft but commanding. My name is Thomas Pemberton. Lord Pemberton's face went white. This was his father. I'm 83 years old. 6 months ago, I had a stroke. My son, the esteemed Lord Pemberton, was too busy with council duties to visit me in the hospital. Too busy to help me navigate the medical system. Too busy to care. The younger Pemberton tried to stand, to protest, but his father's look froze him in place. I applied for specialized care through proper channels. My son assured me it would be handled. Weeks passed, months. I deteriorated in a public ward, unable to speak, unable to move my right side. He paused, his eyes filling with tears. Then a young woman visited. She'd seen my name on a list of delayed cases. She didn't know I was related to anyone on this council. She just saw an old man who needed help. Thomas Pemberton Sr. looked at Catherine with something like love. She visited me 3 times a week. Read to me, talked to me. Treated me like a person when everyone else saw a burden. And when she discovered the delays in my care were due to administrative incompetence, she fixed it within days. He turned to his son. She did what you couldn't, or wouldn't. She cared. Chamber was absolutely silent. Lord Pemberton sat frozen, his face a mixture of shame and rage. So yes, the old man continued, punish her if you must. But know that in doing so, You punish the only person in this entire system who remembers why we have a government in the first place. To serve the people, not to be served by them. He moved to stand beside Catherine, his aged hand finding hers. I stand with her, and if that means standing against my own son's pride, so be it. The weight of that moment hung in the air like thunder before a storm. What happened next would determine not just Catherine's fate, but the soul of the nation itself. Lord Pemberton stared at his father as if seeing a ghost. The old man's words hung in the air, accusatory and true. Around the chamber, council members exchanged uncomfortable glances. The testimonies had shattered their carefully constructed justifications. Lady Margaret stood again, her elderly frame somehow commanding attention. "I move to dismiss all charges against Princess Catherine," she said clearly. "And I move to open an investigation into why our systems failed so catastrophically that a member of the royal family felt compelled to work in secret to help her own." "People seconded," another council member said. Quickly, Pemberton's face turned crimson. "This is absurd. We cannot simply ignore protocol violations because of emotional testimony." "Emotional?" Lady Margaret's voice turned sharp. "Lord Pemberton, when did we become so divorced from reality that compassion became emotion? That saving lives became violation?" She walked toward him slowly, each step deliberate. "I've sat on this council for 30 years. I've watched us become more concerned with procedure than purpose. We've built walls of bureaucracy so high that the people we're meant to serve can't reach us." She gestured to the citizens still crowding the corridor. These people shouldn't have needed a princess sneaking through basement corridors at 3 in the morning. They should have been helped the first time they asked. The fact that they weren't is our failure, not hers. Another council member spoke up, a younger man named David Chen. "I have to agree. My own grandmother nearly died because her medication approval took 4 months. I had to use my position to push it through. If we expect our own families to need special intervention, how can we condemn someone for providing it to others?" The dam had broken. One by one, council members began sharing their own experiences with the broken system. A daughter denied mental health services. A nephew waiting months for surgery. A friend crushed by medical debt despite insurance. Pemberton watched his authority crumble. His father still stood beside Catherine, a living testament to his failure as both a leader and a son. "Fine," Pemberton said coldly. "Dismiss the charges. But this sets a dangerous precedent. If we allow royals to bypass systems at will, then maybe." Catherine interrupted softly. "We should fix the systems so no one needs to bypass them." Every eye turned to her. She'd been silent through the testimonies, tears streaming down her face as person after person defended her. Now she stepped forward, her voice steady despite her emotion. "Lord Pemberton is right about one thing. What I did shouldn't be necessary. A princess shouldn't have to sneak through basement corridors to help citizens. But until we fix what's broken, I'll keep doing it." She looked around the chamber. "I don't want special power to bypass rules. I want the rules to work for everyone. I want a mother to fill out 1 form, not 30. I want a veteran to get help immediately, not after months of bureaucratic shuffling. I want an elderly man to receive care based on need, not on whether he knows someone with influence." Her voice grew stronger. "So yes, investigate me. Examine every meeting, every call, every decision I made. But while you do that, also investigate why 12 people had nowhere else to turn. Why our systems failed them so completely that their last hope was a princess they'd never met." She pulled out her phone, holding it up. "I have documentation of every case I've handled. 47 people in the last 6 months. 47 failures of our system. I'll provide everything to this council. Every name, every story, every broken policy that put them in crisis." Catherine set the phone on the council table. "Use it. Not to punish me, but to fix what's broken. That's all I've ever wanted." The silence that followed was profound. Lady Margaret picked up the phone, scrolling through the files. Her expression shifted from curiosity to horror as she read. "Dear God," she whispered. 47 cases. And these are just the ones who found their way to you." She looked up at the council. How many more are out there that we don't know about? How many people are suffering in silence because our system is too complicated, too slow, too indifferent? Marcus watched from his position by the door as the council's mood shifted. What began as a trial had become a reckoning, not of Catherine, but of the entire system she'd tried to work around. Pemberton made one last attempt. Even if we acknowledge system failures, we cannot condone unauthorized action. The princess acted alone, without oversight, without accountability. She wasn't alone, Marcus heard himself say. Everyone turned to him. Commander Harrison's eyes widened in warning, but Marcus stepped forward anyway. Permission to speak freely, Council? Lady Margaret nodded. Granted. Marcus took a breath. Princess Catherine didn't act alone. She had help. From medical professionals who expedited care, from social workers who prioritized cases, from government officials who cut through red tape, from royal guards who paused, who looked the other way when she needed them to. He looked at Harrison, then at the other guards in the room. She had help because good people recognize that sometimes doing the right thing requires bending rules that shouldn't exist in the first place. Another guard stepped forward, then another. Within moments, half the royal guard in the chamber had moved to stand beside Marcus. We all knew, one said. We all saw her leave at odd hours. We all chose not to report it, because we trusted her judgment. Another added. Harrison finally moved, walking to stand with his guards. I knew as well. As commander, that makes me responsible. If you punish Princess Catherine, you'll need to discharge the entire royal guard. He looked at Pemberton. Good luck protecting the palace without us. The power dynamic in the room had completely inverted. Pemberton was no longer in control. The people were. Lady Margaret smiled, a rare expression on her usually stern face. Motion to dismiss all charges against Princess Catherine and to commend her for extraordinary service to the nation. All in favor? Every hand but Pemberton's rose. Even his own father voted against him. Motion carries, Lady Margaret announced. Princess Catherine, you are cleared of all charges. Furthermore, this council will immediately form a task force to address the systemic failures you've identified. And we would be honored if you would lead it. Catherine's legs nearly gave out. Marcus moved instinctively to support her, but she steadied herself. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. I accept. On one condition, the task force includes the people most affected by these failures. Not just officials and experts, but the citizens themselves. People like Sarah, James, Eleanor. They know better than anyone what needs to change, agreed Lady Margaret said. Pemberton stood abruptly. I resign from this council. Effective immediately. He looked at his father one last time, something breaking in his expression. Then he walked out. His footsteps echoing in the silent chamber, no one tried to stop him as the crowd erupted in cheers. Marcus caught Catherine's eye. She mouthed two words, thank you. But the story wasn't over. Because as celebrations echoed through the palace halls, news cameras gathered outside, word had spread. And what happened next would transform not just policy, but the relationship between royalty and the people forever. The palace doors opened to a sea of cameras and reporters. News of the council hearing had leaked, and the world wanted answers. Catherine stood at the top of the palace steps, flanked by the citizens who'd defended her and the guards who'd stood by her side. Marcus remained one step behind her, as protocol demanded. But nothing about this moment felt like protocol. Catherine raised her hand, and the crowd of journalists quieted. She looked exhausted, her eyes still red from crying, her hair disheveled from the chaos of the morning. But there was something else in her expression now. Hope. 3 months ago, she began, her voice carrying across the courtyard, I met a mother whose son was dying. I met a veteran who'd given everything for his country and received nothing in return. I met people who had fallen through cracks in systems that were supposed to catch them. She paused, gathering strength. I met them in secret because I was ashamed. Not of them, but of a system that had failed them so completely that they had to seek help in basement corridors at 3 in the morning. A reporter shouted a question, but Catherine continued. Today I was brought before a council and accused of violating protocol, and I was guilty. I did bypass official channels. I did break rules. And I would do it again. Gasps rippled through the crowd. This wasn't the careful political language of prepared statements. This was raw truth. But here's what I learned today, Catherine said, her voice growing stronger. I'm not the only one. Across this nation, good people are breaking rules every day to help each other. Social workers staying late without pay, teachers buying supplies with their own money, doctors seeing patients they can't afford to treat, guards looking the other way when compassion demands it. She gestured to Marcus and the other guards beside her. These people showed me that true service isn't about following rules. It's about remembering why those rules exist in the first place. To protect people, to help people. And when rules stop doing that, they need to change. Catherine pulled out her phone, the same one she'd given the council. I have 47 stories here. 47 people who needed help and couldn't get it through proper channels. Starting today, I'm sharing every single one. Not to embarrass anyone, but to show the truth about systems we've let become too complicated, too slow, too indifferent. She looked directly into the cameras, and I'm asking you, everyone watching, to share your stories too. If you've been failed by systems that should have helped you, tell the world. Use the hashtag #HelpNotProtocol, because change doesn't happen in council chambers. It happens when people stop accepting that suffering is just part of the process. A reporter managed to get a question through. Princess Catherine, aren't you worried about consequences? About what this might mean for your position? Catherine smiled, and it was genuine. I've spent my whole life worried about consequences. About saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing, not being perfect enough for this role. But you know what? The only consequence I fear now is looking back on my life and realizing I had power to help people and didn't use it. She stepped down from the podium, moving toward the gathered crowd. Palace security tensed, but Harrison signaled them to stand down. Catherine walked among the reporters, the citizens, treating them not as subjects but as equals. Sarah Mitchell was there with Thomas, the boy looking stronger already. Catherine knelt beside him. How are you feeling? She asked. Better, Thomas said. The doctor said the treatment is working. Catherine hugged him, not caring that cameras captured every moment. Good. You keep getting better. And when you grow up, you make sure systems work for everyone, okay? Don't let people forget. I won't, Thomas promised. Over the next weeks, something remarkable happened. The hashtag #HelpNotProtocol went viral. Thousands of people shared their stories. Not just in Catherine's nation, but around the world. Stories of bureaucracy that killed, of systems that failed, of rules that hurt instead of helped. The task force Catherine led became a model. Half the members were officials and experts. The other half were ordinary citizens who'd experienced the failures firsthand. They worked together, dismantling broken processes and building new ones centered on people. Not paperwork. Within 3 months, average processing time for medical approvals dropped from 12 weeks to 5 days. Veteran services were overhauled with input from veterans themselves. Social services hired more caseworkers and simplified. Applications to 3 pages instead of 30. But the real change was deeper. It was in how people viewed their relationship with government, with authority, with each other. The idea that rules existed to serve people, not the other way around. Took root. Marcus watched it all unfold, still serving as royal guard, but now with a different understanding of what that meant. One evening, 6 months after the hearing, Catherine asked to speak with him privately. They met in the same basement chamber, where he'd first witnessed her secret meetings. It had been renovated now, turned into an official citizen services center. Catherine smiled at the transformation. I never properly thanked you, she said. For speaking up? For risking everything? I just told the truth, Marcus replied. The truth is dangerous, Catherine said. It cost you, didn't it? Marcus had been passed over for promotion. Faced resentment from some colleagues who thought he'd betrayed the guard's code of silence. But he'd also received letters. Hundreds of them. From people thanking him for standing up when it mattered. It was worth it, he said honestly. Catherine nodded. I'm creating a new position. Citizens Advocate for Royal Affairs. Someone who can work between the palace and the people, who understands both duty and compassion. Someone who's proven they'll choose people over protocol. She handed him a formal letter. I want it to be you. Marcus stared at the paper, his heart racing. I'm just a guard. You're the person who saw wrong and made it right, Catherine corrected. You're exactly who we need. He accepted the letter, emotion overwhelming him. I don't know what to say. Say you'll help me finish what we started, Catherine said. This isn't over. We've fixed some things, but there's so much more to do. And I need people beside me who won't stay silent when they see injustice. Then I'm with you, Marcus said, for as long as it takes. As they walked out of the chamber together, into the evening light, Catherine paused. Do you know what the council asked me last week? They wanted to know if I regret it. If I wish I'd never started those secret meetings, never risked everything. What did you tell them? I told them my only regret is that I didn't start sooner. She looked at him. We spend so much time protecting institutions that we forget they're supposed to protect people. You reminded me of that. That night you followed me, you could have reported me. Instead, you saw what I was trying to do, and you protected it. I protected you, Marcus said simply. No, Catherine corrected gently. You protected the idea that power should serve compassion. That duty includes caring. That courage sometimes means standing alone until others find the strength to stand with you. In the distance, they could see people entering the new Citizen Center. A young couple with an infant, an elderly man with medical papers, a woman who looked lost and overwhelmed. Staff members greeted them with warmth, guiding them through streamlined processes that actually worked. That's what we're building, Catherine said. A system where people don't need a princess sneaking around at 3 a.m, where help is accessible to everyone, not just those lucky enough to find a sympathetic ear. She turned to Marcus. Thank you for being that sympathetic ear when I needed one. For being brave enough to tell the truth, for remembering that beneath all the titles and protocols and procedures, we're all just people trying to help each other. As the sun set over the palace, casting golden light across the courtyard, Marcus realized something profound. He'd spent 8 years guarding buildings, following orders, protecting an institution, but in one night, he'd learned what it truly meant to protect something worth defending. Not walls or crowns or protocols, but the fragile, powerful idea that those who have power should use it for those who don't. That rules exist to serve people, not control them. That sometimes the most important duty is knowing when to break ranks and stand for what's right. The story of Princess Catherine and the Royal Guard, who witnessed her journey, became legend. It was told in schools, referenced in speeches, remembered in the hearts of people who learned that change is possible when courage meets compassion. And in that basement turn center, on a plaque by the door, were words Catherine had inscribed. Here, in the darkness, light was found. Here, in secret, truth was spoken. Here, protocol bowed to compassion. And here we remember, service is not about rules. It's about love for those we serve. Years later, when people asked Marcus about that night, about what made him step forward when silence would have been safer, his answer was always the same. I saw someone with power choose to serve instead of rule, and I realized that's what duty really means. Not protecting the powerful, but empowering the powerless. Not following orders, but following conscience. Not guarding walls, but guarding the hope that tomorrow can be better than today. The nation Catherine helped transform became a model for others. Systems were redesigned with people at their center. Officials were held accountable not to protocols but to outcomes. And the idea that compassion could coexist with duty, that emotion could strengthen rather than weaken leadership, spread like fire. But perhaps the most important change was simpler. It was in how a mother felt when seeking help for her sick child. It was in the dignity restored to a veteran who'd sacrificed everything. It was in the knowledge that somewhere in the system, someone actually cared. That night in the basement, when Marcus first witnessed Catherine's secret mission, he thought he was seeing protocol violated. Instead, he witnessed history being made, one conversation at a time. One person helped. one life saved. And he learned that sometimes the greatest courage isn't standing at attention in perfect formation. It's standing up when everyone else sits down. Speaking truth when silence is expected. Choosing people over procedure, even when it costs everything. That's the story of Catherine and the Royal Guard. Not a fairy tale about perfect people, but a true story about imperfect humans trying to do right in a complicated world. About finding light in dark places. About voices that refuse to be silenced. About love that takes the form of action. And about the quiet moment when one person decided that witnessing injustice wasn't enough. That sometimes you have to step into the light and say, I saw this. I know this is wrong, and I won't stay silent anymore. That moment changed everything. Because that's how change always begins. With one voice, one choice. One act of courage that inspires others to be brave. The rest, as they say, is history. History written not by councils or kings, but by ordinary people who refused to accept that suffering was inevitable. Who looked at broken systems and said, we can do better. Who remembered that beneath every title, every position, every rule, we're all just human beings deserving of dignity, compassion, and care. And that's a story worth remembering, worth retelling, worth living every single day.